All right, good morning, everybody. Thanks, everybody, for being here. We are going to get rolling with the final Transportation Committee hearing of the session, potentially, most likely. We'll be in that direction. So call the meeting to order. The Transportation Finance and Policy Committee meeting, and there is a quorum present, and today is Thursday, April 18th. All hearings are recorded and live streamed by House Public Information. And so we have minutes from April 16th, and Representative Petersburg, have you had a chance to review the minutes?
Yes, Mr. Chair, and I would certainly approve those minutes as presented.
Thank you so much. We have a motion to approve the minutes. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? The meeting minutes are approved. All right, so today we have one bill on the agenda, and that's the 5242, which is the Transportation Finance Bill. And Chair Hornstein moves that House File 5242 be referred to Ways and Means. And first, we are going to start with a walkthrough of the bill, and we're going to have Mr. Lee and Mr. Burris walk through the bill for us. The DE, so we'll be referring to the DE1 currently. So, Mr. Chair, do you have anything that you would like to say first as we begin, or should we go to the walkthrough?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I think we should go through the walkthrough and then head on to the amendments.
Beautiful. Thank you. Representative Petersburg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just to be correct on the process, we probably should move the DE before we start talking about it.
You are probably correct. Thank you very much for that. So, Mr. Chair, would you like to move?
Yes, I will move the DE for House File 5242.
So Chair Hornstein moves the DE1 to House File 5242. So, Mr. Burris.
Mr. Chair, members, I think Mr. Lee is going to start with the
Mr. Lee.
spreadsheet.
Mr. Chair and members, in your packet there should be a portrait size spreadsheet, one page. This is divided up by fund. So the first few lines 1 through 13 are the general fund items contained in the DE and author's amendment. So that's the amendment A6. The first item is $1 million for the Metropolitan Council related to Union Depot insurance grant. That's a one-time general fund appropriation. Then there's a one-time $9 million general fund appropriation to MnDOT for small cities. So the gross total for general fund is $10 million. In the bill, though, there's an amendment, or there's a change to the 2023 appropriations for IIJA federal discretionary match. You can see that on line 9. That was the amount appropriated last year. This DE amends that down by $8 million to $208.4 million. So the net total increase in general fund spending proposed under this DE and author's amendment is $2 million, and you can see that on line 13. Then with the author's amendment, the A6 and the base DE, there's a number of trunk highway appropriations. You can see on lines 20 through 26. The first being rumble strips, and that is an increase in the base as well of $300,000 a year. And then landscape partnerships, an increase of $1 million a year out of the trunk highway fund. And then there's a series of one-time appropriations, $3 million for greenhouse gas emission analysis and $800,000 for grants to MPOs. Then there's a series of items that were in the governor's recommendations for the capital budget. $40 million in trunk highway fund one time for high priority bridges, 4.8 for drainage asset management, 7.75 for truck parking, and 20.1 million for facilities capital improvement. Then the next few items are under appropriations from the driver and vehicle services account. The first is increase for driver's exam staffing. I should note that this amount is about $900,000 more than the governor's suggested level. Then on line 33, a one-time appropriation for $1.2 million for the Lights On grant program. And then on line 34, an increase in appropriation in fiscal 2025 and in the tails for the ignition interlock legislation. Then there's a few changes to DVS special revenue, the amount of revenue coming into the account as a result of proposed legislation. Lines 39, the rotary special plates would increase revenue by an estimated $1,000 a year in the tails. And on line 40, vehicle title application deadline changes would decrease revenue by about $508,000, and this was estimated based off of information from DPS, but might need to be updated. I will note in the next iteration of the spreadsheet, the net total spending, all funds, I didn't notice on the spreadsheet, but I'll just tell you now, for the 24-25 biennium is $85,130,000, and for the tails, the base is set at an increase of $10.266 million. On the next page are reflect fiscal notes and changes that are not direct appropriations. The first four, starting on line 48 and going through 51, are related to railroad legislation. Then there's a governor's rec item on line 55 and 56. This allows MnDOT to collect passenger fare revenue from the secondary train to Chicago. And then there is some estimated incurred cost from the Department of Commerce as a result of the high voltage transmission line legislation. And that's the spreadsheet.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lee. Mr. Burris.
Mr. Chair and members, with that, I'll go through the language in the amendments. First, just to orient you, the H5242DE1 amendment contains a number of the provisions that Mr. Lee had outlined, but there is a second amendment that would amend the DE1, and I'll touch on that as well. The DE1, Article 1, sets out the appropriations, a number of which, or all of which Mr. Lee had covered. Just so you have a sense of the structure, this is similar to other budget bills, but it's supplemental, so the amounts that are identified are in addition to appropriations made last year. So Section 1 sets out the structure. The following sections 2, 3, and 4 lay out appropriations for the departments. Section 5 on page 4 has the cancellation from a prior appropriation that Mr. Lee had outlined. And then Section 6 has a change to a previous appropriation to specify that a Carlstadt Airport project was phase 1 of that project. And then Mr. Chair and members, Article 2 starts on page 7, and that contains a variety of policy and finance provisions. Section 1 is a conforming change related to the ignition interlock and intensive testing program to add a cross-reference. Section 2 sets out rumble strip requirements for trunk highways in some circumstances. Section 3 establishes a new memorial bridge. Sections 4 and 5 amend requirements around greenhouse gas emissions assessments and analysis, as well as setting up an advisory committee. And then moving to page 15 of the DE1, a series of sections relate to high voltage transmission lines. This is sections 6 through 11. This establishes explicit co-location authority for high voltage transmission lines, sets up some procedures around that process, and it also sets requirements on reimbursements elements. Moving then to page 18 in the DE1, section 12 goes along with section 13. This is a change from the bill as originally heard. It includes some technical modifications and a conforming change, including to eliminate some obsolete language. So the substantive change is found in section 13, and this goes to extending out the length of time for a temporary permit on vehicle purchases. Section 14 establishes a Rotary International special plate. And then on page 20, another series of sections 15 through 17 modify the deadline for title applications. This is modified from the bill as heard in committee so that the deadline length is extended out to 20 days. And there's also a change, or a couple of changes that are technical and conforming to set up the deadline and modify the the structure a bit in statute so that there's just one date established and then cross-references made to that date. Moving then to page 22, another series of sections, sections 18 through 22, relate to changes to the ignition interlock program. This creates a largely parallel intensive testing program for non-alcohol related DUI violations, so that a person would be subject to requirements that are somewhat similar to ignition interlock, but would instead be regular testing related. So that's a number of sections 18 through 22. That, Mr. Chair and members, would bring us to page 32 if you're following along in the DE1. Section 23 is another provision related to the high voltage transmission lines that it just establishes a explicit addition of high voltage transmission lines in a policy statement that's in statute. And then section 24 is a piece of changes related to motor carrier of railroad employee regulations. This is the conforming change on use of funds so that any deposits into a safety account would then be able to be used for enforcement related activities of the department. Section 25 establishes wayside detector system requirements for railroads. And then section 26 sets a maximum train length requirement for railroads. Section 27 sets hours of service requirements for railroads. And then sections 28 through 30 again relate to the motor carrier of railroad employee requirements. This sets up enforcement procedures and explicit investigation, complaint investigation authority on the department on the part of the Department of Transportation. This does include some changes from the bill as it was originally heard in the committee, including to set out procedures and clarify that a civil penalty is what could be imposed by the department, kind of the process around imposition of that penalty. Section 31 relates to an appropriation for community roadside landscape partnerships. This is a technical change that splits out a portion of that appropriation. So the appropriation language is found in Article 1, and then this sets some requirements of the department in expanding the program that was in the original language but is now shifted to be an uncodified section. And then finally, Section 32 contains a repealer. Paragraph A repeals and a special plate that's made obsolete by the special plate being established in the DE1. And paragraph B eliminates an administrative rule related to commercial driver's license, number of hours of instruction. And then, Mr. Chair, the A6 amendment, I know is not quite before us, but just so that you're aware, that contains a number of the appropriations that Mr. Lee had outlined in the spreadsheet and is anticipated as an author's amendment to the DE1. There's some other provisions in there which we could get to at that time if you wanted, or I could.
Yeah, we'll wait on
So I'll hold on anything further, just so you're aware of the connection to the spreadsheet is those two amendments essentially.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And so just a roadmap for everybody as to how we're going to proceed today. So we have some wonky policy, like how process things. We've got a tertiary amendment that we would like to work with Representative Petersburg on. And so we are first going to adopt the DE amendment, and then we're going to do amendments to the DE, amendments to the 5242 as amended. So that's how we're going to move forward with those in order to be able to accept that secondary tertiary amendment there and get that done. And so now we'll accept that, and then we're going to do testimony, and then we are going to do amendments, and then we're going to do any discussion about the bill overall. Representative Petersburg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and as long as we have Mr. Burrish here, could you just go back to page 21? Can you tell me the impact of changing registrar to commissioner will that have a impact into the authority of registrars? Or will Commissioner, in fact, encompass all of the staff, including registrars?
And we'll do this just since it's top of mind right now, but then the rest of the questions and everything we'll hold until we're done. So Mr. Burris.
Mr. Chair, Representative Petersburg, they're synonymous, so deputy registrar
thank you.
is separate. This is a technical change to kind of shift the terminology to just refer to the commissioner.
Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you, Mayor. So Mr. Chair, do you have any comments or discussion before we accept the DE1?
No, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I just appreciate the work of the committee, and particularly want to thank our nonpartisan staff. I want to thank Mr. Marble, Mr. Bauman, and Kyle for their work on this, and let's dive right into this.
Perfect. All right. So with that, all those in favor of adopting the DE1, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay.
Hey,
The ayes prevail and the DE1 is adopted. All right. Now we move on to testimony on the bill. And so we'll start with Commissioner Daubenberger. And as commissioners coming up, we'll give a little latitude for the commissioner, but all other testimony that we have today will be limited to 2 minutes. And we have a lot to get through today, so I'm going to be nowhere near as nice as Chair Hornstein generally is about everything. So just be aware as we get into this, because we got a lot of work to get done today. So Commissioner Daubenberger, please state your name for the record and continue.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Nancy Daubenberger, and I am the Commissioner of the Minnesota Department of Transportation. Thank you for the opportunity to provide comments on the House Omnibus Transportation Bill. We appreciate working with Chair Hornstein, Vice Chair Tabke, and Lead Petersburg throughout this session, and we thank them and all the committee members for their work on this bill. I understand the committee intends to amend the existing bill with many of MnDOT's budget items from the governor's budget bill. And so my prepared comments reflect that understanding. And while these provisions are budget neutral, their impact on Minnesota's transportation system can be significant. We appreciate the $40 million in funding for high priority bridges, along with the technical correction required for transportation facilities program appropriated last session. Additionally, the governor recommends establishing a tribal workforce training program to mirror at the state level what the federal government provides in terms of highway construction training for tribal members. Also included in the governor's budget is the authority for MnDOT to collect their revenues from passenger rail service. So we thank you, Mr. Chair, for including that in your bill. And in addition to the governor's budget recommendations, we also appreciate the inclusion of recommendations of the Greenhouse Gas Working Group. These recommendations are consistent with Minnesota's and MnDOT's sustainability objectives and the agency's long-term goals of reducing greenhouse gas emissions and vehicle miles traveled. Working group members have found that the preferred approach for evaluating the greenhouse gas and vehicle miles traveled conformance of transportation investments is through integrated multimodal regional planning. This plan would establish the overall process for achieving the state's greenhouse gas and vehicle miles traveled target reduction targets and provide the ability to incorporate land use, highway, and other multimodal transportation planning into an overarching vision for the state. The recommendations to the legislature seek action in two different forms. First, to clarify the certain elements of the legislation, and second, to provide resources to build capacity for evaluating emissions within regions through improved planning and modeling resources for the state and local governments. So thank you again, Mr. Chair and committee members, for your work on this bill, and I stand for questions.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Daubenberger. I think we'll hold those off until we get around past the amendments and we got the bill in the shape we will have it in. So thank you very much. Next, we have Cassandra O'Hearn, followed by Steve Huser.
Morning.
Thank you very much for being here. Please say your name for the record and proceed.
Will do. Good morning. My name is Cassandra O'Hearn. I'm the Deputy Commissioner for the Minnesota Department of Public Safety. Before I begin, I want to thank Chair Hornstein for his work on this bill and the many years of commitment to supporting the work of the Department of Public Safety and its divisions, the Minnesota State Patrol, Driver Vehicle Services, the Office of Traffic Safety, and the Office of Pipeline Safety. So thank you. DPS is incredibly grateful to Chair Hornstein for funding DVS examiners at a level above and beyond the 22 FTEs included in the governor's supplemental budget. The additional funding included in this bill will allow DVS to hire 10 more examiners, in addition to the 22 initially requested. DVS is grateful to the chair's consideration and inclusion of this additional funding and would utilize the additional funding to support both Class D and CDL examiners. Significant investment will provide DVS the resources to dedicate additional examiners to both Class D and CDL. DPS is concerned about a provision in the bill that funds the Lights On grant program out of the DVS operating account. While DPS appreciates the benefits of the Lights On program, the DVSOA is the only funding source for DVS to provide its core services. Funds in the DVSOA are statutorily authorized only for driver and vehicle services and operations of DVS. While we appreciate that this is one-time funding, with anticipated pressures on the DVS special revenue account over the next biennia, to support the needs of DVS, any reduction to those accounts limits the ability to offer services improvements in the future. And last, I'd like to thank Representative Cagle for her collaboration on the intensive testing program and willingness to make changes to ensure the program can be effectively administered. Once again, I'd like to sincerely thank Chair Hornstein, the members of this committee, and all the committee staff and for your partnership for funding the work of DPS and its transportation-related divisions. Overall, DPS supports this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Now we'll have Steve Huser, followed by Marion Green. Say your name for the record and please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the committee, my name is Steve Huser. I'm a Senior Government Relations Representative for the City of Minneapolis. I just want to start by thanking the committee, Chair Hornstein, for the collaboration that we've seen so far this session with the City of Minneapolis. To the bill, we appreciate the additional funding that is included in this bill for the state infrastructure. We all, I think, can appreciate the critical needs that we all face in our infrastructure in the state. Specifically, we do support the additional $1.2 million for the Lights On program. The City of Minneapolis is a participant in that program. Looking ahead to the work of this committee today, we would encourage the committee to support the A6 amendment, which does include the bus rapid transit project infrastructure provision. And I want to thank Representative Senser-Murrah for working on that bill this legislative session. The city does look forward to working with the chair and members of this committee as this work comes together with the work of the Senate. I'll leave you with a thank you to everybody on this committee for the work this session. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have Marion Green, followed by Cap O'Rourke. Please state your name for the record and proceed. Thanks for being here.
Good morning. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, members. My name is Marion Green. I'm a Hennepin County Commissioner from District 3 and the chair of the Hennepin County Regional Rail Authority. Last session, you passed an historic transportation bill to make transformational improvements and deliver a robust network of fast, frequent, reliable service. The A6 amendment builds on that to ensure that we deliver safe and efficient transit projects. It will require that arterial bus rapid transit projects include full ADA improvements at stations and transit-specific infrastructure to improve reliability and service. Hennepin County and fellow local governments have been close partners in the implementation of these projects, and we will continue to invest millions in these corridors to improve safety and maintain the roadways. Thank you for making sure that these projects are fully scoped and done right. Full project scoping will mean shared understanding up front on what a project will include and what it'll cost. That will serve all jurisdictions, including the legislature, better than the current more piecemeal approach. Speaking of improving on current approaches, this is also important for larger scale infrastructure projects so we don't repeat the mistakes of the past. The Blue Line Extension Light Rail Transit Project will connect Brooklyn Park through Crystal, Robbinsdale, and North Minneapolis, serving racially diverse communities that have felt the lasting impacts of historical redlining and disinvestment. The Blue Line Extension will better connect transit-dependent residents with our expanding regional transit system that now includes light rail lines, arterial BRT, regular BRT, and local buses. Since this project's inception, community has voiced enthusiasm for the project and what it will mean for residents. The community knows that this level of service for these communities is overdue, and they are ready to receive it. Concurrently, community has also consistently expressed concerns about the risks for residential, economic, and cultural displacement impacts. Hennepin County recognizes the urgency that neighbors are feeling for strong anti-displacement measures, and we have been working with local metro, and federal partners to advance policies and secure funding. In fact, there's a lot of enthusiasm about this work at the federal level, both at the White House and at the FTA. As the geographies directly served by the line see economic benefits accrue, we look forward to working with this committee to make sure corridor residents and businesses share in the project benefits by investing in community-driven anti-displacement strategies. Thank you again for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you very much for being here. Next up, we have Cap O'Rourke, followed by Joel Mueller. Welcome. Please state your name and continue with your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, my name is Cap O'Rourke. I'm the Executive Director of the Minnesota Association of Small Cities. To make this quick, last session you guys did pass historic legislation that for the first time would give ongoing dedicated revenue to Minnesota's small cities, over 700 cities with populations under 5,000. In that bill, there was going to be a biennial total of $23 million over the 2 years. Unfortunately, that is not the case. What's now going to happen in fiscal year 24, small cities receive $0, and in fiscal year 25, they're estimated now to receive $2.5 million. In this legislation, we appreciate the $9 million one-time appropriation. What we are asking for is an additional $11 million. This is not, I've been asked, our ask was 20. Our ask was not 20. Last session, our ask was $40 million, and the legislature gave us $23 million. All we are asking for is that this body uphold what it passed last session to give small cities its full $23 million. Cities have budgeted that. They are trying to plan for that. They are looking for where that revenue is going to come, and currently on the Minnesota Department of Transportation site, if you look at fiscal year appropriations for small cities, it still shows appropriations of $3 and $19 million. So an additional $11 million to small cities will fulfill the promise that you guys made last session and put small cities on the right footing for their transportation needs. Thank you.
Thank you, Cap. Next, we have Joel Mueller, followed by Nicholas Kadich. Say your name and please proceed.
Good morning, everybody. Joel Mueller with the Brotherhood of Locomotive Engineers and Trainmen. I would like to thank the committee for their hard work on a lot of the rail safety provisions that are included in this bill in sections 25 through 28. I believe a lot of these provisions will help address some of the safety challenges the railroad industry has been facing over the last several years. The requirement for defect detectors will ensure that rail equipment is scanned more frequently and fills a gap in a non-existent federal regulation. Will still allow the rail industry to expand beyond the basic requirements of this bill in the realm of freight car inspection. The cap on train length fits with Minnesota's rail infrastructure. It will also help ease the congestion that the Minnesota's rail network has been experiencing in recent years. It still allows the rail carriers to provide reliable and efficient service to many of the shippers throughout the state, including the ag shippers and taconite mineral shippers up in Minnesota's Iron Range. And in fact, I think this provision I will argue that it will improve the service. The other provisions in this bill will protect a group of railroad workers that have fallen through the gaps on federal regulation, and the motor carrier portion of the bill will ensure that crews are safely transported. I want to finish by saying that the members that I represent want the rail industry to thrive. We've seen a lot of challenges in this industry recently, and it is in everybody's best interest that Minnesota has a robust, efficient, and safe rail network, and I believe the provisions in this bill will help address and ensure that we have that going forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now we have Nicholas Kadich, followed by Amber Backus. Please state your name for the record and proceed.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. My name is Nick Kadich, and I am the Minnesota Legislative Director for Smart Transportation Division, a labor union representing conductors, engineers, and yardmasters. So rail safety sections 25, 26, 27, and 28 in House File 5242 are necessary and appropriate. They serve the best interests of railroad workers, shippers, the public, and even the railroads. The only reason to oppose these standards would be to appease the Wall Street bottom line, certainly not for any reason related to running a good business. States have authority to regulate railroads. This has been proven over and over, most recently with our minimum crew size law from last year. When the railroads don't want something, they use federal preemption as a blanket argument, even when it doesn't apply. They threaten to sue. They withhold monies they owe. The term getting railroaded has several applications. None of them are positive. I'm here before you with just a couple of minutes to convince you these sections in House File 5242 are right for our state, while also facing down a smokescreen of half-truths and innuendos brought forth by industry lobbyists. As a railroad conductor myself, speaking with the voice and experience of all the conductors, engineers, and yardmasters I represent, I ask you to trust in us. We're the workers who actually do the job and want to see the railroads succeed and the customers be serviced. Safety isn't a buzzword for us. It's literally life and death. We don't care what Wall Street wants. We're not in this for short-term profit gains. We're here for the long haul, dedicating our lives to this profession. There are amendments out today seeking to undo the work done in committees this session, and we urge you to reject them. And we thank you for your time and consideration, and thank you to Chair Hornstein as well for all of your work. And I will stand for any questions later on.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kadich. Amber Backus, followed by Michael Wojcik. Good morning.
Yes, good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Amber Backus with United Strategies on behalf of the Minnesota Regional Railroads Association, which includes larger railroads as well as 14 carriers that are Minnesota-based impacted adversely by this bill. And we'd like to speak in opposition to the new regulations on freight railroads in sections 25 to 29. I'm not going to speak to the specifics of each, but question their need, especially since all are likely preempted under federal law. There's a narrative that railroads are unsafe and getting less safe, but the data does not support this. Over the last decade in Minnesota, total accidents and incidents have fallen 46%. Equipment-caused accidents have fallen 66%, and incidents on mainline track have dropped 52%. And earlier this month, the FRA released data from a new inspection program focusing on high-hazard flammable train routes. Over the past year, 443 inspections were conducted in Minnesota on these routes, the fourth most of any state in the nation, with 157 of those performed by MnDOT's own state rail inspectors. In the course of these reviews, 102 wayside detectors were inspected, and 75 operating practice reviews looked at dispatch and crew responses to wayside detector notifications. Out of 443 inspections, 5 recommended violations, a rate of 1.13%. And when you compare employee injury rates of railroads to other modes of transportation, railroads have the lowest, as you can see in the letter in your packets. And regarding hazardous material incidents, freight railroads' numbers are infinitesimal when compared to trucking. Yet the disparate approach between the treatment of freight transportation modes in this bill is stark. The delete all and authors amendment are funding rust areas and using state dollars to make trucking safer and help their drivers comply with federal hours of service laws. But for freight rail, The bill is imposing 4 new sets of regulations, with the wayside detector provision alone expected to cost the industry upwards of $90 million. And again, this includes the small short lines that are based here. And we're redirecting those dollars from investments in predictive technology and track improvements that are proven to make rail safer. And in this deal to go after the railroads, you are actually hurting their customers, and we've had conversations with some of the folks in the agricultural community about this. So the Minnesota farmers, grain elevators, ethanol plants, and mining operations that depend on rail to get their goods to market will face increased costs. So I appreciate your time. I'm sorry I didn't have a chance to get into preemption, but just wanted to note that since these bills were heard, the Federal Railroad Administration administered their 2-person crew rule and reinforced the need for national uniform laws that don't create a patchwork. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Michael Wojcik. Thank you for being here. Please proceed.
Honorable Chair, members, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here and speak on behalf of the Bicycle Alliance of Minnesota and our thousands of members throughout the state. I don't feel the need to touch on the provisions of this bill as you've heard them all before. What I will say is there are meaningful improvements here to make the lives and safety of your loved ones throughout the state of Minnesota much safer. There's very little change from what we presented on before. I'd be happy to stand for questions later. I will note that a small change in terms of how funding is accessed for the fiscal note will allow the Commissioner to access active transportation funds for these to cover this, not only in the current biennium, but in out years as well. There's no impact to the general fund or the trunk highway fund. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, that concludes the list of folks that we had signed up to testify. Is there anybody else from the audience that would like to speak? All right, seeing none, we will move on to the amendments. So we will begin with those. We will start with the A6 amendment, which is an author's amendment. And Chair Hornstein, would you like to move your amendment?
Yes, I will.
Chair Hornstein moves the A6 amendment. Would you like to discuss it, please?
So this basically incorporates the changes that we've anticipated through public testimony and includes the governor's recommendations on the situation with facilities capital, the truck parking, the high priority bridges. We include the Lights On grant program, the traffic safety allocation. We made some changes to the zero emission transit buses, and these are the changes that we've anticipated. Also with the zero emission and electric transit vehicles and the bus rapid transit infrastructure. So that's the author's amendment.
Thank you very much, Chair Hornstein. We've got a couple of different authors' amendments here, and so we'll go through them one at a time. Any questions on this one? All right, seeing none, all those Representative Petersburg.
Thank you. Did I understand that the A29 is actually a direct amendment to this particular amendment, or am I wrong there?
It is not. It is the A29 is amendment. Oh, wait, you are correct. This is a tertiary amendment. So this is, thank you for that. I did not realize that was there. So the A29, we have an amendment to the amendment. So A29 is the next one. Chair Hornstein, and so would you like to, so we've moved the A6, and so we need to move the A29 amendment to the amendment. Thank you very much, Representative Petersburg. Okay. All right. So we have a couple of these. So Chair Hornstein, will you, hold on, I need to talk to Mr. Burris here real quick. perfect. All right, thank you, everybody.
This is a technical, Mr. Chair, this is a technical.
All right, perfect. So we have moved the A29 amendment to the amendment, so this is amending the A6 as a technical amendment. Any questions on the A29? All right, seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? The motion prevails, and the A29 is amended on to the A6. And now we have another one, A31 is another amendment to the A6. So, Mr. Chair, will you please describe the A31?
So this changes a number of the provisions in the zero-emission transit bus legislation. We listened to some of the testimony, and so we move out some of the effective dates and consider some additional off-ramps for this particular provision.
Perfect, thank you. Any questions, discussion on the A31 amendment to the A6 amendment? All right, seeing none, all those in favor, say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? The motion prevails. And now we have the A6 in the format that we'd like it in, so the A6 amendment. So thank you, Representative Petersburg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would prefer request a roll call on this amendment. I think this is it's a fairly extensive amendment dealing with a lot of things that we just heard this week, and I just think we needed a little bit more time to do it, so I'd request a roll call, please.
Thank you. Further discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Saying, will you please do a roll call on the A6 as amended?
Chair Hornstein.
Aye.
Chair Hornstein, aye. Vice Chair Tapke.
Aye.
Vice Chair Tapke, aye. Lead Petersburg. No. Lead Petersburg, no. Representative Brand.
Aye.
Representative Brand, aye. Representative Elkins.
Elkins, aye.
Representative Elkins, aye. Representative Fogelman.
No.
Representative Fogelman, no. Representative Hudella.
No.
Representative Hudella, no. Representative Cagle.
Aye.
Representative Cagle, aye. Representative Kraft.
Aye.
Representative Kraft, aye. Representative Murphy.
No.
Representative Murphy, no. Representative Nelson.
Aye.
Representative Nelson, aye. Representative Norris.
Aye.
Representative Norris, aye. Representative Olson. Representative Olson is excused. Representative Sensor-Mira.
Aye.
Representative Sensor-Mira, aye. Representative West.
No.
Representative West, no. Mr. Chair, 9 ayes, 5 nays, 1 excused.
With 9 ayes and 5 nays, the motion prevails. Moving on to the A3 amendment. This one is Chair Hornstein, A3 amendment.
So this was a bill we heard earlier. Representative Ream had brought it, and this addresses the issue of e-bikes, and I think Representative Ream is here. If you can give,
And we can just
more.
have Representative Ream if there are any questions or things.
Okay.
We've already heard the bill, so.
Yeah. So if there's questions, we heard the bill and want to make sure that this was included. And if there's any questions. we can-
Perfect. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So A3 amendment, any discussion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed?
Aye.
The motion prevails. Thank you very much. Thank you for all your work, Representative Ream, and for being here. Now we have the A25 amendment. Representative Cagle.
Oh, sorry. Oh, so the Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll move the A25. The A25 is technical amendment to the ignition interlock provisions in the DE.
Thank you very much. Any discussion? Chair Hornstein?
I would support the amendment.
All right, seeing no further discussion, all those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? The motion prevails. Moving on to the A28 amendment, which is also Representative Cagle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The A28, so last year when we did the sports team license plates, we required them to have a foundation in order to get the license plates. What this would do would allow the Minnesota United to direct their proceeds to the Loon Restoration Fund instead of forming a 501c3 or a foundation. Then they could just give it straight to the loons. So it's the Loons for Loons amendment.
Thank you very much, Chair Cagle. Chair Hornstein, any comments?
I'd support that.
Support the Loons for Loons for sure. That is good. Any discussion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor of the A2 amendment? Wait, I just said the wrong one, sorry. The A28 amendment. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion prevails. All right, now we get the A2 amendment on here, and this one is Representative Norris.
Thank you, Chair Tabke. This amendment represents a bipartisan priority of our North Metro legislators that I'm proud to bring and offer on behalf of our region. It would provide funding for a pedestrian overpass over Highway 10 in the city of Ramsey. If you're familiar with this area, it's an area that's seen a lot of growth over the past number of years, and it's really becoming a pretty active area. The bridge would connect two east-to-west continuous regional trails that come together in that area. There's a transit station, and there are plans for a youth athletic complex that's going to be built in this vicinity as well, which would bring a lot of youngsters to the area, those that wouldn't necessarily be able to transport themselves via car. And so the idea of a pedestrian bridge is really critical for not only the economic development in the area, but the safety as well. In recent years, this section of Highway 10 has seen a number of crashes involving pedestrians and bicyclists, including 2 crashes that resulted in pedestrian fatalities, unfortunately. The total cost of the project is $7.5 million. This would be a $3.75 million request from the state, and the city of Ramsey would cover the other half of the project cost. So members, I'd encourage you to yes vote on this. It's a way to promote both active transportation, but also safety and economic development in this part of the North Metro.
Thank you very much, Representative Norris. There's an amendment to this amendment, and so Representative Petersburg, would you like to present the, we can do that as the actual amendment, so I don't have the number in front of me.
A26.
Thank you, sir.
So, thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to move the A26 amendment, and basically, it doesn't say anything about the value or quality of the project, because I think anytime we can increase safety and connectivity is great. What I do have concern with is the way it's written, the money would come out of trunk highway funds, and we have been continually kind of raiding the trunk highway fund for a lot of different projects. Because we have an active transportation account that is designed for active transportation that includes walking and all other modals of transportation, it seems like that would be the best place to take the funds rather than from the trunk highway fund. And so my motion, my amendment simply takes the money from the trunk highways, from the active transportation account instead of the trunk highway account.
Thank you very much, Representative Petersburg. Representative Norris.
Chair Tabke, Representative Petersburg, I think this is a helpful suggestion. I'll accept it as a friendly amendment. Appreciate the teamwork on this.
Discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor of the A26 amendment to the A2 amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion prevails. Now we've got the Representative Norris amendment, the underlying amendment, the A2. Any discussion on the A2? All right, seeing none, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion prevails. All right, perfect. So we are now on to the A24 amendment. Representative West.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You can tell you used to be a mayor. You really know how to get a meeting moving along. All right. So the A24 amendment takes $1 million from the tree planting area of the bill. That takes money from the Trunk Highway Fund. And as that's on topic right now with that last amendment, is trunk highway funds should be directed to trunk highways. So I thought, let's put it to my favorite trunk highway, Highway 65. Now, I know this is a Representative Cagle provision where this money is coming from, so I didn't want to take it from Representative Cagle and put it into the section of Highway 65 in my district, because that's just greedy. But there's another part of Highway 65 from 99th all the way down to County Road 10 that also needs to be done. And I've heard from many people from that community, including elected officials, that are concerned that that will take ages to get done because it is so expensive, because it deals with Highway 10 in that area. So in that spirit, it's rather than using trunk highway funds for tree planting, we should use trunk highway funds for planning and design and safety improvements on that stretch of road, since it's good to get started early. Now, $1 million isn't an abundance of money, but I know for sure the local communities would be interested in seeing this move forward as soon as possible. So I ask for members' support on this provision. I think it's an appropriate use of trunk highway funds, and it's a good use for Highway 65, which, of course, we got Section 2 funded, which is absolutely delightful, and that was the worst section in terms of congestion. We're going to see congestion appear on these other sections of it in the near future. So let's get started today, because we know it takes years and years and years to get the money necessary. So I ask for your support, and I request a roll call.
Thank you very much, Representative West. Discussion on the amendment. Representative Cagle.
Mr. Chair, so I'm torn on this one, Representative West, because I do think that we do need to make sure that we're doing the landscaping improvements, but I also recognize the 10 tangle is a really big deal. I would like to maybe move an oral amendment.
Sure, have at it.
Okay, can we, I would say that we, instead of taking it from the landscaping fund, that we take it from trunk highway funds.
Mr. Burris and Mr. Lee, could you help us out with this oral amendment?
Mr. Chair and members, with just a moment, I can give you an oral amendment for that.
Thank you very much. So just assuming we get the language that could work out on that, Representative West or Representative Petersburg.
Thank you. The other question is, in regards if this actually has expanded the trunk highway funds in appropriations in this bill, does that violate any other things? Maybe Mr. Lee might have that information. Will this increasing the appropriations of trunk highway fund in this bill, will that change the bill enough so that it's no longer a valid piece?
Mr. Lee.
Mr. Chair and Representative Petersburg, there is not a Ways and Means budget resolution for trunk highway spending.
Further discussion while we give some time to work here. Representative West.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That doesn't resolve, I like using trunk highway funds to plant trees personally, but I understand trunk highway funds are used for beautification of trunk highways. That does happen. So I don't love that. But I think if this is going to go on, I would withdraw my request for a roll call, because I assume this will sail through then, and that would be delightful.
I feel like your intuition would be accurate there. But we'll give just a minute to get this figured out so it is correct. Mr. Burris.
Mr. Chair and members, for an oral amendment, I have, and this would be amending the A24, page 1, delete lines 3 to 4. Page 1, line 7, after is, insert from the trunk highway fund.
So we have deleting lines 3 and 4 on the A24 amendment after insert is from the trunk highway fund. Is that accurate? Is everyone clear on the Representative Brand?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question for I guess you, Mr. Chair, or for the Chair Hornstein, the author of the bill, has this specific issue been represented in this committee as a bill in the last 2 years?
Mr. Chair.
We have had certainly a discussion of Highway 65 extensively over the last couple of years.
Representative Brand.
Thank you. Chair Hornstein, specifically, my question is this particular section of Highway 65.
Chair Hornstein.
We've had, Mr. Chair and Representative Brand, we've had, pretty expansive conversations about all aspects of Highway 65 in this committee.
Representative Cagle.
I was just going to add, thank you, Mr. Chair, that this has been extensively studied. And the one part that hasn't been studied is this 10 tangle where Highway 65, County Road 10, and Highway 10 all meet. And so this $1 million, since we're investing a ton in the northern part, we're redoing everything north of that and then have plans for everything south of that. And so this would be a study specifically for the 10 tangle so that we don't have like 6 stoplights in a 1 block area.
And Representative Cagle, who specifically calls it the 10 tangle?
This is, I'm trademarking the 10 tangle.
All right, thank you. So we have oral amendment as described by Mr. Burris. Any discussion or questions on that oral amendment to the A24? Do we need to accept the oral amendment first, Mr. Burris, or can we just proceed with the?
Mr. Chair, I would take that unless Representative West wanted to incorporate that language into his amendment, it would be a separate oral amendment that the committee would take up and consider.
Representative West.
So we avoid a second vote if I say I incorporate it? You can nod. Okay, I incorporate it.
All right, beautiful. All right, so all those in favor of the A24 as amended by the oral amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, the motion passes. Thank you very much, Representative West. Now we go to the A22 amendment. Representative Hudella.
Mr. Chair, members, so 98 years ago, our Mendota Bridge was dedicated to the 151st Field Artillery Battalion, also known as the Gopher Gunners. The 151 was highly decorated in World War I, saw combat action there, participated in World War II. There's currently a plaque about the size of a sheet of paper on each end of the bridge. So the source of this amendment, the Department of Military Affairs wants to rededicate that bridge. They want to put slightly larger signage on each end of the Mendota Bridge, and they'll cover all the costs for it. We heard this bill a few days ago in the Veterans Committee, passed with department support, but it touched transportation, so we wanted to offer it as an amendment to our omnibus this year.
Thank you very much, Representative Hudella. Chair Hornstein.
I think that's a reasonable amendment and would ask for support.
Beautiful. Any other discussion or questions? All right, seeing none, all those in favor of the A22 amendment, say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? The motion prevails. Now we move on to the A10 amendment. Representative Petersburg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let me just get it around here. Trying to get through all these amendments and try to get them to the right spot here. So
you made your own bet on this one, my friend.
Well, no,
You could have put them in order.
without us understanding the order in which you're going to call them from, it just takes a little bit of time.
We're accepting all the ayes first.
All right. So the question here is, when we talked about this greenhouse gas, a large portion of the bill is all about that. One of the things that we noticed is that there are certain situations in this amendment, which I will move A10, Mr. Chair, I move A10, that on page 9, after highway, to also insert and multimodal. It's important for us to when we're trying to do an analysis on projects or portfolio in regards to projects and how it impacts greenhouse gases and the mitigation of such, that we include everything. And so we have a couple amendments. Now, this is one of them that makes sure that we also include multimodal as one of the ways to consider, because that is a mitigation process. And so basically what my amendment just says, it inserts multimodal.
Thank you very much, Representative Petersburg. Representative Kraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Representative Petersburg. This is directionally the intent of the legislation. I appreciate you offering this, and I'll accept it. Recommend a yes vote.
Further discussion on the A10 amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion prevails. Now we move on to the A7 amendment. Representative Olson.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the A7 amendment very simply just talks about shifting some money to town road and bridges. So we're talking about townships who didn't get anything in this bill. We're just going to take $8 million from last year's NLX train to Duluth and instead utilize that money, $4 million each for townships, and then $4 million for bridges. I think this is a pretty fair way to ensure that the townships still get something this year.
Thank you very much, Representative Olson. Discussion, Chair Hornstein.
I think Representative Cagle will respond to that.
Oh, Representative Cagle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I would suggest a no vote on this. First of all, the NLX, we had the Rail Commission, what was it? Blinking now.
Yeah.
FRA. One of the FRA bigwigs came out here to, hear about our NLX project. And so, we're very, very top of the list for getting that funding. And I'm afraid that any kind of cut to that fund would hinder our ability to secure the project. And then also, we do have some funds that are a little bit flexible in that IIJA account. And so in the DE, it has it coming from the IIJA account. So I would suggest a no vote on this one.
Representative Petersburg.
And thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before Representative Olson finishes up here, I would just want to comment that my understanding is that the department and the railroads are just now starting discussions. We're looking a long ways off for the appropriations for this train, and it's just sitting there while we understand the great need for our townships and others that really, and town bridges that really need this funding. We put a lot of money in this bill in for small cities, but haven't really done anything for townships and town bridges, and this would be really helpful. We have to remember that 48% of all the roads in the state are run by townships. And that's a big infrastructure for them to maintain. This seems appropriate for us to invest some of that money in something that actually have an impact currently while we're waiting for all of this other there. This $8 million can be filled in later as it becomes closer to fruition. But while we are still struggling with township roads, they really need the money. So I would really ask for and support a yes vote.
Representative Kagan, any follow-up on that? Representative Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think Representative Petersburg did a great job of explaining that we've got nearly $1 zillion allocated towards this railroad to Duluth. It's not going yet. It's not there. No one's getting it set up yet. We're still in the planning phase of it. Nothing has happened physically to it yet. This is something that will have an immediate effect to many townships, many bridges in this state. It's a wonderful opportunity for us to address an immediate need now. And I hate to say put the train on the back burner, but it's already on the back burner. This is not a project that is occurring currently right now today. So I would request a roll call on this vote.
Thank you very much, Representative Olson. Roll call has been requested. Any further discussion on the A7 amendment? Mr. Saying, please take the roll. Oh, was there someone else? Oh, okay.
Chair Hornstein.
No.
Chair Hornstein? No. Vice Chair Tabke?
No.
Vice Chair Tabke? No. Lead Petersburg?
Yes.
Lead Petersburg? Yes. Representative Brand?
Aye.
Representative Brand? Aye. Representative Elkins?
No.
Representative Elkins? No. Representative Folgeman?
Yes.
Representative Folgeman? Yes. Representative Hudella?
Yes.
Representative Hudella? Yes. Representative Cagle?
No.
Representative Cagle? No. Representative Kraft?
No.
Representative Kraft? No. Representative Murphy?
Yes.
Representative Murphy, yes. Representative Nelson.
No.
Representative Nelson, no. Representative Norris.
No.
Representative Norris, no. Representative Olson.
Yes.
Representative Olson, yes. Representative Sensormira.
No.
Representative Sensormira, no. Representative West.
Aye.
Representative West, aye. Mr. Chair, the ayes are 7, the nays are 8.
Just barely.
With 7 ayes and 8 nays, the motion does not prevail. All right, so now we move on to Representative Murphy, the A15 amendment.
The A15 amendment, Mr. Chair, it has to do with the insurance max for railroads. Typically, the mandate here is for $5 million, but in some cases, the levels of insurance that are offered are actually less than that. And this amendment just allows for that to be up to $5 million instead of a $5 million mandate.
Thank you, Representative Murphy. Any discussion on this? Representative Brand.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would ask for a no vote on this. I think that both of the folks that represent the unions of the folks who work in this industry did a very good job of articulating in this committee, articulating in the Judiciary Committee, and also in the Commerce Committee for why this is an important part of this. It has been through the process. I would also point out that in doing some research in an excess liability policy that can be added to any existing insurance policy, you can also, according to the insurance experts, click on a box indicating additional underinsured coverage. The last thing I would say is that there has been some argument about whether or not something like this exists. And I would think that in a capitalistic, free enterprise system, if we create an opportunity, somebody's going to meet the demand. So I would ask for a no.
Further discussion, Representative Peters.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and that brings a real big question because, as we know, and my understanding is, the railroad industry is a huge industry and self-insures. And so they have the capacity of doing 5 million liabilities and so forth. But currently, we're not aware of any common carrier that is providing that limit of liability insurance out there. So basically, in essence, what we're doing by changing this is requiring the railroad companies, instead of being able to subcontract this out for other groups, is forcing them to bring it in-house to become self-insured rather than an insurance policy. So just to be clear, by not taking on this amendment, which just says whatever the top limit of liability and underinsured is available, that becomes the limit. We have automatically increased the requirement of insurance companies. And if no insurance company wants to take on that risk, then it kind of hog ties the railroad industry into being self-insured. So I think this is something that we always have to be careful about, in which we try to impose our authority onto insurance companies and others. And so I would highly request a yes vote on this motion.
Thank you, Petersburg. Final comments, Representative Murphy.
I'd just like to add that, in the business of insurance, that's what they do. It should be their choice on what they want to offer and the ability for the railroad to accept it. It just gives it some flexibility to the insurance provider.
Thank you, Representative Murphy. Okay. All those in favor of the A15 amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, say nay.
No.
The motion does not prevail. Moving on to the A17, Representative Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This one has to do with just a federal preemption for railroad provisions. It just requires the Commissioner of Transportation to make sure that they certify the validity of the project so that it doesn't violate any federal laws.
Thank you, Representative Murphy. Representative Brand.
Okay, so for this one, I have a question. So we're talking about the validity of which provision or the entire bill?
Representative Murphy.
It's a really good question. I'm not sure. I'd maybe yield to Peter.
Representative Petersburg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And the question is that when the department, in this particular case, the commissioner has to deal with the policies within this particular bill in relation to railroads, and understanding that there is at least some conflict or at least a disagreement on what preemption does, it seems to make sense that we would not want to put the state in jeopardy of violating federal law and federal preemption. And so this just requires the commissioner to do the due diligence to actually go out to the federal and find out whether or not it falls within preemption before it's implemented. So it would be all aspects that would fall underneath preemption law.
Representative Brand.
Thank you very much for that clarification. When I went to the Judiciary Committee, I had some testimony that I had applied to the committee from one Lawrence Mann. He was the author of the 1970 Rail Safety Act back in 1970, federal Congress legislation. In it, he says in his sworn affidavit that a state may adopt or continue to enforce any additional or more stringent law, regulation, or order related to railroad safety or security when the law, regulation, or order A, is necessary to eliminate or reduce an essential local safety or security hazard, B, is not incompatible with law, regulation, or order of the U.S. government, and C, does not unreasonably burden interstate commerce. He goes further to say, therefore, clearly undue burden on interstate commerce is not relevant in the present safety bill. And so for that sworn testimony, I would say that at least we have an expert's eyes on this, saying that this does not go incompatible with the 1970 Federal Rail Authority Act. Furthermore, what I would say to this is that the same arguments were made last year when we talked about two-person crews. It's now the law of the entire nation because we passed it here in Minnesota. And so I think this is another opportunity for us to do something that's positive for both worker safety and public safety. So please vote no on this amendment.
Representative Petersburg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I think some bill and statute that's put in place in 1970 and then talk about today, we certainly know that there have been other district court rulings, federal rulings that have upheld a federal exemption in regards to this, even as soon as just a few years ago down in Arizona. And so whereas we could say that there's, until something comes and goes through court, there is no guarantee of what the precedent is going to be. This bill, or this amendment, just simply says, hey, at least we should do our due diligence to make sure that we have and standing on common ground before we make some of these decisions. It seems, we're trying to help you out here to make sure that we don't make mistakes in this bill. And it seems to me we would want to make sure that our commissioner is on solid footing when we do that. So whereas Representative Brand, I understand that the information that you're getting from one person who wrote some of these rules, we don't know what the federal law is currently or what's being heard in other district courts. So I just think this is common sense piece, and I would also request a roll call. I think it's that important.
Thank you very much, Representative Petersburg. Final, Representative Brand.
Thank you for asking for the roll call. I was actually going to do that, so you beat me to it. The last thing I would say on this discussion, I guess, is that anybody could sue for any reason in the state and the world. And I think at the end of the day, that's the burden that we have in three branches of our government, is that at the end of the day, we do have the Supreme Court, we do have a court system in place. And so I think that we have solid footing on this. That's my interpretation.
Representative Murphy.
Yeah, I think it's just important to reduce any liabilities that we have as taxpayers in the state. It just seems like this is really common sense to make sure we're doing that. We can certainly have ideas of whether or not we think it is, but it would be great to have a little bit closer idea, and that's the whole purpose of this amendment.
Thank you, Representative Murphy. Mr. Cy-Young, please call the roll. The A17 amendment.
Chair Hornstein. No. Chair Hornstein, no. Vice Chair Tapke.
No.
Vice Chair Tapke, no. Lead Petersburg.
Aye.
Lead Petersburg, aye. Representative Brand.
Brand votes no.
Representative Brand, no. Representative Elkins.
Elkins, no.
Representative Elkins, no. Representative Folgeman.
Yes.
Representative Folgeman, yes. Representative Hudella.
Yes.
Representative Hudella, yes. Representative Cagle.
No.
Representative Cagle, no. Representative Kraft.
No.
Representative Kraft, no. Representative Murphy.
Yes.
Representative Murphy, yes. Representative Nelson.
No.
Representative Nelson, no. Representative Norris.
No.
Representative Norris, no. Representative Olson.
Yes.
Representative Olson, yes. Representative Sensamira.
No.
Representative Sensamira, no. Representative West.
Aye.
Representative West, aye. Mr. Chair, the ayes are 6, the nays are 9.
With 6 ayes and 9 nays, the motion A17 does not prevail. Now moving on to the A18, Representative Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is another amendment that discusses having the Commissioner of Agriculture, this is the Commissioner of Agriculture now, instead of the Commissioner of Transportation. But one of the biggest fears that I have with regard to a lot of the railroad requirements and mandates that we're placing is that it's going to have an adverse effect on the agricultural sector of the state of Minnesota. Now, remember, everyone, Minnesota is a great agricultural producing state. My district, especially, very heavily agricultural related. We deal with that. Just about everything we do is agriculture, as is, Representative Fogelman's got a huge district on ag. Representative Brandt, your district is very large, heavily involved in the ag industry. And all of us surround in some way agriculture, whether it's an ethanol plant or CHS has a soybean oil facility in Mankato there. And I fear that these restrictions on our railroad industry will prevent agriculture from being able to move efficiently throughout the country and throughout the world. The soybean growers actually just sent a delegation of individuals off into Asia in order to try and shake hands and convince them to buy American soybeans. Now, we need to be able to get Minnesota soybeans to Asia. We need to be able to get Minnesota corn to Asia. That's what we need to be able to do. And by hindering our railroads, we will adversely affect that issue, except for if the Commissioner of Agriculture were to do a study of this and say, you know what, I've analyzed this issue, and I don't believe that any of these railroad mandates will hurt us in agriculture. And if that's the case, then that's great. But I fear that we're making some really irresponsible decisions here today that will adversely affect the agricultural sector, the agriculture industry here in the state of Minnesota. And so my hope is that we'll accept this amendment to have the Commissioner of Agriculture look at the issue and determine whether or not it will hurt our ag industry. And if it will hurt our ag industry, I hope we'll make changes. And if it won't, then, then at least we've done our due diligence. We've covered our bases to ensure that agriculture remains a very sound industry here in the state of Minnesota. And Mr. Chair, I would request a roll call on this amendment.
Thank you, Representative Olson. Representative Brand.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much for asking for the roll call. This is another one I was going to ask for a roll call on as well. You had made some comments about how it would hurt agriculture. I spoke with Commissioner Peterson actually yesterday about these specific provisions. We had a very good conversation about this. And, I think at the end of the day, I did some research here. So in the industry standard is about 110 cars or 6,500 feet for when it comes to agriculture products, grain trains specifically. And so the problem that we have is any longer train, it really becomes a challenge when it comes to loading and unloading these facilities because a lot of them just don't have that capacity to handle more than 6,500 feet or 110 cars. Furthermore, grain trains run directly from a loading to an unloading facility. The raw product goes to facility. Like, for instance, wheat gets pounded into flour, and then the flour goes to another place where they make baked goods and stuff of that nature. And so when railroads run longer trains, this actually hurts the industry because the unit train is actually delayed at the terminal, while more of the manifest freight is loaded onto these longer trains that can be up excess of 1,500 or 15,000 feet, and then they go from place to place, and then they have to spend time unloading these cars specifically. I've actually seen this happen in Mankato with the CHS facilities, where these long trains, up to 3 miles long, can actually block portions of my district, those intersections, while they unload these trains. CHS kind of has to wait the waiting game for the ethanol to go to the ethanol plant, the raw product to go to the CHS plant and stuff of that nature. And so I would ask for a no vote on this, and that's all I really have to say about this.
Representative Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I'm glad that Representative Brandt had a preemptive conversation with the Commissioner of Agriculture. If that is truly the case, then that would be wonderful, but I am not currently willing to risk our agricultural industry just, hodgepodge here, nilly hearsay kind of conversation. I would like an actual analysis done to ensure that our ag industry is safe and sound into the future, and I think that this is an absolutely reasonable ask for this committee to perform the analysis to ensure that we are not punching agriculture in the nose when we shouldn't be doing that. That's the number one thing we should be doing in southern Minnesota, is protecting the agriculture industry. So I'd advocate very strongly for a yes vote.
Thank you, Representative Olson. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, Mr. Sayung will take the roll.
Chair Hornstein.
No.
Chair Hornstein, no. Vice Chair Tabke.
No.
Vice Chair Tabke, no. Lead Petersburg.
Aye.
Lead Petersburg, aye. Representative Brand.
And votes no.
Representative Brand, no. Representative Elkins.
No.
Representative Elkins, no. Representative Folgeman.
Yes.
Representative Folgeman, yes. Representative Hudella.
Yes.
Representative Hudella, yes. Representative Cagle.
No.
Representative Cagle, no. Representative Kraft.
No.
Representative Kraft, no. Representative Murphy.
Yes.
Representative Murphy, yes. Representative Nelson.
No.
Representative Nelson, no. Representative Norris.
No.
Representative Norris, no. Representative Olson.
Yes.
Representative Olson, yes. Representative Sensimira.
No.
Representative Sensimira, no. Representative West.
Aye.
Representative West, aye. Mr. Chair, the ayes are 6, the nays are 9.
With 6 ayes and 9 nays, the motion does not prevail. Thank you very much, Mr. Sayung. Moving on to Representative Olson with the A20 amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The A20 amendment just removes the dictation of 7,000 some feet for a train length when it is discussing the transportation of Minnesota-made products. If you're talking about transporting goods across this country, it's important to not hinder anyone, but more especially if you're going to hinder no one, if you're going to hinder everyone else, you should not hinder Minnesota-made products. So what we're talking about here is corn, soybeans, ethanol, great agricultural products, but also many of the vast minerals that are in northern Minnesota. We have to ensure that we are not dictating to them that and slowing their pace of being able to produce, because every dollar that is made here in the state of Minnesota is one more dollar for our state and our people. And we should absolutely not stand in the way of Minnesotans, hardworking Minnesotans, and their ability to get their products to market. You know, a couple years ago, we had some issues with soybeans and China, and we were able to move our things here in the state of Minnesota much better, and we had a great production capability here. My cousins over in South Dakota, they had a basis that was minus $1.50, and my basis was minus 10 cents, because we have superb agricultural industry processing facilities here in Minnesota. We need to protect that industry. We need to ensure that Minnesotan-made products are able to get across the country and across the world efficiently and safely and on time. So I think that breaking a train in half in order to make sure that it gets to market is an inefficient way of selling Minnesota-made products. I'd ask for a yes vote, and I'd ask for a roll call.
Roll call has been requested. Discussion. Representative Brand.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. On this one, too, I'm glad that the roll call was already requested, because I would have done that as well. So in doing just a little bit of research here on the taconite side of things, we already talked about the size of a load of grain cars, 110 cars, 6,500 feet. We have a wonderful international port of Duluth, where a lot of that stuff goes to international cities because we have the ability to have that port in the Great Lakes. We also have a wonderful barge industry that also operates and does a lot to send our agricultural products down to markets south of here. And well, as long as the river is full of water, right? We had some issues with that a couple of years ago. But what I would say is this. In addition to what I said about the grain cars and how about what the limits are already, we're going to be well within the characteristics of the train length bill that we're actually talking about today. You know, there's two providers, there's two train providers that will send taconite to the port for loading onto a boat, which goes up and down the Great Lakes to wherever they need to take that and melt it down into metal. BNSF taconite trains can only take 6,300 feet worth of load, and that goes to the Superior, Wisconsin load docks. And so anything in excess to 6,300 feet, well, that goes into Lake Superior, it doesn't get unloaded. Over on the Duluth side of things, Canadian National, they can only operate at 5,500 feet. Anything in addition will, you know, as you drive through 35 in Duluth, you see that the unloaders are above us on that bridge there. Either it goes in Lake Superior or it doesn't get unloaded. And so I would say this amendment is not sound.
Representative Norris.
Thank you, Chair Tabke. There's been a lot of discussion about things like federal preemption. This one, I believe, would almost certainly be unconstitutional under the Dormant Commerce Clause. That's a principle that says that Under the U.S. Constitution, the federal government is allowed to regulate interstate commerce. The inverse of that is that states are not allowed to give preferential treatment to its own products or its own economy. As much as I would love to, support Minnesota industry, I think it's great to support Minnesota industry. Unfortunately, something like this, there's a lot of case law from the U.S. Supreme Court on this. This would almost certainly be unconstitutional as a violation of the Dormant Commerce Clause.
Representative Petersburg.
Thank you. So it sounds like I'm hearing that there would be an oral amendment that says that it excludes that and then everybody would be okay with it. No, I understand you're not going to be okay with this, but Representative Brand brought up a good point about barges and other things. We don't, at least I'm not aware of any state-required mandate on how long and how many barges can be put together in a barge pack, primarily because the industry knows what the best system is. Going through the locks and dams, you've got to break them apart and put them back together again as well. And so that's really the piece that we're talking about. The industry tends to understand it better than the legislature does. And for us to put together a requirement based upon our perceptions is not right. And so in this bill, whereas you might be right, it may be unconstitutional, I have no doubt that it's going to be voted down. The point is that we need to keep talking about situations like this in which we try to usurp our belief versus nationwide or business-wide practices. And so whereas this will undoubtedly be voted down, I think it's a discussion that we need to keep talking about. Thank you.
Closing comment, Representative Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I always find it humorous when individuals will say, well, we think this is unconstitutional. They say it doesn't matter. The state of Minnesota can pay and the Attorney General can try and fight it in court. And then they come back with, well, I think your idea is unconstitutional. So that's always a fun conversation to have. Well, we don't care if it's ours. We'll defend it. If it's yours, we think it's unconstitutional. With that being said, members, if what Representative Brand says is true and that the industry standard is not exceeding this maximum that he has identified, then you've got a solution looking for a problem. And we're looking to write laws for no purpose. When no one is doing this, then why are we mandating that they don't do it? It's having a list of rules. We're creating legislation to make ourselves relevant. Is that what we're attempting to do? If, in fact, this isn't happening, why are we legislating for it to not happen? We're wasting our time, we're wasting government money. Well, if this is in fact happening, then maybe that's where the discussion should be had. But if we're just standing here saying, in case someone ever decides to do that, we want to make sure that we get ahead of the game and make it illegal. I would still advocate that this vote is for Minnesotans and Minnesota products. Whether or not it's constitutional, it's still for Minnesota industries. It's making a statement that you support Minnesota industry in here in your job as a representative. I would still recommend a yes vote, and then you can let the Attorney General fight for it, like you're going to have the Attorney General fight for your other things too.
Mr. Sayung will call the roll.
Chair Hornstein?
No.
Chair Hornstein? No. Vice Chair Tabke?
No.
Vice Chair Tabke? No. Lead Petersburg?
Yes.
Lead Petersburg? Yes. Representative Brand?
No.
Representative Brand? No. Representative Elkins?
Elkins, no.
Representative Elkins? No. Representative Fogelman?
Yes.
Representative Fogelman? Yes. Representative Hudella?
Yes.
Representative Hudella? Yes. Representative Cagle?
No, sorry.
Representative Cagle? No. Representative Kraft?
No.
Representative Kraft? No. Representative Murphy?
Yes.
Representative Murphy? Yes. Representative Nelson?
No.
Representative Nelson? No. Representative Norris?
No.
Representative Norris? No. Representative Olson?
Yes.
Representative Olson? Yes. Representative Sensormiro?
No.
Representative Sensormiro? No. Representative West?
Aye.
Representative West? Aye. Mr. Chair, the ayes are 6, the nays are 9.
With 6 ayes and 9 nays, the motion does not prevail. All right, friends, it's 10 o'clock, and we are going to take a short recess here to celebrate our friend, Chair Hornstein. We've got a lot of folks who've come who don't normally come to transportation meetings, so welcome everyone to the glorious Transportation Committee. It's great to see everyone here. And so we, I think Jared's walking in. So we have cake that will be walking in just a few seconds here. And so I should actually say we're in recess for 10 or 15 minutes to celebrate Chair Hornstein. So as we know, yeah.